Hey there, welcome to the channel. I'm Ben, and today we're going to take my Honda XR650L ADV Build out for a little adventure. So for those of you who have not been following the build over the last year, I picked this bike up a little bit more than a year ago now. It had a set of IMS foot pegs on it and the Seat Concept seat, as well as an oversized Clark gas tank. I swapped that back for the stock XR tank, which only holds about 2.8 gallons, just to kind of get a feel for what it's like to ride this bike as close to stock as possible. And now I've sort of left it on just because I really like how it looks, but obviously we've made a lot of other modifications that were sort of born out of some of the other adventure tests that I did throughout the season last year. I was also sort of testing it alongside the DR650 here to see how they compare. I've got videos on all that stuff. I've got a huge playlist of all of the adventure modifications and other modifications that I've done to this bike. If you guys want to check that out, I can put a link for it down below. The very first modification that I made to the bike was to stick a wider splined primary drive sprocket on. If you guys haven't done research on these XRs, with the stock sprocket, which has a much thinner spline area, which is essentially what connects the front sprocket to the engine, and without a replacement aftermarket sprocket, people have had problems where they basically chew all the teeth off of that spline. So I switched that out right away, but that was just for the stock 15-tooth size sprocket. I've since swapped that out for a 14-tooth sprocket, which sort of brings the power down a little bit lower, but it also brings your sort of top end down a little bit lower, and we'll test and talk about that on the ride a bit. On the ride last year, this bike still had the stock tires on it. I've now swapped them out for a set of Tusk Waypoint tires. Due to some things that I noticed that I actually liked much more about the DR650, I actually decided to lower this bike 3/4 of an inch in the front, 1 inch in the rear with the Hemisphere off-road kit. I've also got Hemisphere's bash protection on the bottom, the glide plate, as well as side protection for both sides of the engine's case. I upgraded the headlight and added some auxiliary lights that are actually tapped into the high beam circuit, so they just come on and turn off with the high beam switch, which is really slick. I've also added the Hemisphere off-road rally fairing with a CarPride W702 CarPlay unit on the back, along with a tachometer that doesn't really seem to work very well with the XR, so until I get that figured out, I would not suggest that. But I also added a voltmeter, which will come in handy since I'm a little bit overloaded as far as the stator output capacity goes with the Tusk grip heaters and the Tusk seat heater, which I think would be very nice since today it's only supposed to get up to about 50. To help with comfort and both on and off-road performance, I swapped the stock 7/8 bars for a 1 1/8 Tusk Chubb bar in the Moto bend, and those are on a set of 2-inch adjustable rocks risers. I've also got the Tusk hand grips and lever grips. And of course, as always, to protect both my hands and my levers, I've got some full wraparound Tusk D-Flex adventure guards. So huge thanks to all my sponsors like Rocky Mountain ATV and Hemisphere Off-Road that have helped me put this bike together. And huge thanks to all of you guys who have been using my affiliate links to all these products that I'll have down in the description and in the top pinned comment. I could not make videos like this without my sponsors and without you guys. So huge thanks to you. Let's saddle up and see how this bike does. So of course the first thing that we've got to do is fill up, and we are starting a little bit further away from town than I did last time, because with the 14-tooth sprocket on here, especially for running a little bit higher speeds on the county roads, we are inevitably going to burn off fuel a little bit faster. So we'll get a trip meter reset, and we'll come back at the end of the day and check fuel mileage and, well, hopefully range. Hopefully I can make it back here. And we'll get you some numbers for that. Put some premium in here, not because the bike needs it, but because I believe it won't have any ethanol in it. Sure is nice being able to touch the ground a little bit easier. It's not the main point of why I lowered it, but boy, it makes this thing so much nicer to ride around town when you're hopping on and off. Let's go have ourselves an adventure. Also makes weaving around like that a lot easier too. Oh, these bikes make a good sound, don't they? What a beautiful spring day for a ride, too. I'm happy to be out again. Got a smile on my face if you can't see it. So this will be about the fastest that we're gonna go on this adventure. But I was on the freeway a little bit on the way to the gas station. And I've got to say, this bike with the 14 tooth on it, in comparison to the DR with the 14 tooth, this definitely feels a little bit more vibey, mostly in the foot pegs, and I suppose a little bit in the handlebars and the seat too. Still definitely comfortable and fine. I think at that speed, you just obviously have to keep in mind with either of these bikes that it is a big bore dual sport that was designed when I was in diapers, before I was even born, actually, I suppose. So it's not going to be a smooth parallel twin for certain. But to be honest, that really doesn't bother me that much because I personally don't like freeway travel. I mean, 55, 60 miles an hour, which is exactly what I'm doing now, is, I think, perfect speed really for any motorcycle. I mean, maybe something with a huge amount of wind protection and with some more weight. I mean, maybe I would enjoy freeway travel, but I prefer just to stick to the back roads. And really, this thing has some pretty decent wind protection, of course, since I've added the Hemisphere off-road rally fairing, but even just stock with these big scoops that are really meant to scoop air into the engine to pass over the cooling fins, because of course this is an air-cooled bike, not a liquid-cooled bike. And unlike the DR, it doesn't have an oil cooler or anything stock. You can add one, of course, after the fact if you like, but in my climate here in Wisconsin, it doesn't really seem to be too big of an issue. I haven't run into any problems that would maybe think that I need an oil cooler yet. But I gotta say, on this windy day at 60 indicated on the dash, which is probably 5 or so over, maybe 4, this is a pretty comfy bike to ride. And that was in 4th gear. This is 5th. I mean, I'm certainly getting some vibration, mostly noticing it right now in the seat, but it's not bad. It certainly isn't something that's annoying me. And I've always said that about the XR, that while it does vibrate a bit, and obviously you get some input through all the contact points, I don't know, it just kind of feels like a big thumper to me. It doesn't really bother me. Would I want to ride it for 200 miles a day on the pavement? No, probably not. But that's not why I bought this bike. I bought it to do exactly what we're doing today. That's about an hour trip up north, and I'm sure enjoying it now. I don't really miss the wind protection of the KLR, which, if you guys aren't familiar, I had a Gen 2 at first and then a Gen 3, both with windshields that were kind of stood up a bit. I would definitely like a little bit more wind protection, just because the wind now, and the buffeted wind, I suppose I should say, kind of hits me right in the eyes, I guess. So if I open this, it would be incredibly noisy and almost undoable. But I've actually got something coming that should fix that. So that should be interesting, and we'll test that out in the next couple weeks. As far as sort of passing power at this speed, if we drop down to 55 and I hit it again, I mean, it feels like I'm lugging this thing, honestly. If I was to have to pass a car at this speed, I would definitely want to downshift. Yeah, definitely. So it's certainly not feeling wound out here. Yeah, on the uphill, I'm feeling like I'm lugging it too. Definitely still more than enough power when you downshift. Always loved getting out and going on adventures like this. At first it was in my 4x4 pickups, and then on sport quads, and then finally I moved to my first dual sport motorcycle, since I was kind of getting sick of road riding on sport bikes, and bought the DRZ 400. And I was really pretty disappointed with that bike when it came to stuff like this, because at 55 that bike just seemed like it was out of gas, more or less, where both really the KLR, but especially the XR650 and the DR650, they're certainly not my 2008 CBR 600RR, but they definitely have, I would say, just enough get up and go to make you smile around the corners. A lot of people, my wife especially, It's not like the early springtime beauty, as I call it, but I really like it. It's kind of a stark, fresh, new beginning. It means it's time to start getting back into the woods and getting some mud on the tires and the bike. I was telling somebody that in a comment just recently that that's one of my favorite smells is hot, muddy water on hot exhaust and engine parts. Reminds me of the first couple times I was ever off-roading a vehicle with my dad. It's actually where I learned to drive a pickup is off-road while we were hunting. Always just takes me back to that and younger days of driving around in the woods and playing in the mud. So this is really not supposed to be a DR XR comparison video again, and if you guys are interested in that, I actually just did one, but I feel like I really have noticed on those first couple corners there, really trying to rail it, that this thing pretty much is more or less pinned at higher speeds around those corners. And if you guys have seen the videos before, you know that I say this bike is a lot more fun at lower speeds because it just really, I think due to the torque curve, just hits. I mean, right away. You just get all the power immediately, which I mean can be a lot of fun, but the DR is a little bit better. I think once you're at 45 or above, not that I'm an expert, but I've also been able to do 0 to 60s faster on that bike, on the DR than this one. So this thing definitely does leave, I think, a little bit to be desired on the top end in comparison to the DR, but still, like I said, better than the DR Z400 for sure. And even with this thing lowered, it's still, well, towers above the DR650 and the KLR, but being that it is lowered, a little bit lower than it used to be, it's certainly a lot more fun in the corners because of it on the pavement, but definitely more fun off-road, which we'll see in a bit, which really makes total sense because with that lower center of gravity, it just makes the bike feel a lot more planted and a lot less work to sort of get it to come back into line after you've leaned it over. So I would say lowering it definitely makes it a much better road bike. Especially on a windy day like this, it's definitely nice to be a little bit lower to the ground. You don't get pushed around as much. Oh, whoops. Apparently I haven't been following the route. Guess I know my way here well enough, I don't really need it. If you guys are unfamiliar with this CarPlay unit or CarPlay units in general, essentially this doesn't really do much of anything on its own. It actually really does, this one especially does nothing on its own. The one in the DR has a built-in barometer and compass, but the regular model here, just the W702 on the XR, you essentially need to connect a smartphone to it so you can cast, what I've got here is the Gaia GPS app. But you can also just cast Google Maps or Onyx Off-Road, I believe, or whatever other app that you can cast to a CarPlay or Android Auto. They certainly have some downfalls. They'll drain your battery on your phone a lot quicker, and they'll kind of make your phone run a little bit hotter, but it is really nice to have that big screen. And if you guys want to know more about that, you can check out both the comparison and the review video that I've done on this and the W702 Pro. So I'm really feeling pretty darn comfortable on this bike. If you guys remember last year, and just in the videos where I've talked about it a bit recently, the foot pegs on here are kind of high, so I end up kind of with my legs scrunched up a little bit more than I would like. And I've actually got a line on a set of foot pegs that would drop my stance here about an inch. So that I think will be kind of interesting to test. But one thing that I'm noticing and sort of forgot about until I've just started to notice how comfy I feel like I am, or at least my upper body, is that these Rox 2-inch risers that I've got pushed basically all the way forward, I have not, I guess, put a lot of road miles on since I put them on. I put them on this winter and then goofed around a bit, but hadn't been on a ride like this since I had a different set on here, and I really do like that they're so much further forward. It just feels like I have so much more room in the seating area, which is definitely good. I keep an eye on my voltmeter, which is not flashing at me like it looks like it is for you guys, but even though I've got my MSR cold weather gloves on, I think I'm going to put that on. I guess we might as well do it on high. See what that gets us. I haven't felt the need to put the seat heater on yet, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, that definitely drops down to 13.5 now. It was at 14 something. Get back up to speed here. But other than my throttle hand, I'm really staying decently warm. We've got the MSR Expedition helmet from Rocky Mountain ATV, Balaclava, MSR Explorer coat and pants, along with their adventure boots, which are waterproof, which you definitely need if you're going to be riding off-road near puddles, even if you just need to wade in to see how deep one's going to be. Really love that feature. What else? Got their socks on, the mid layer and the base layer, and I've got a heated vest on, and I've got heated inserts in my boots, but I don't have either of those things turned on yet. And I think it was supposed to get up to 50. It's probably 46, 47 here. But like I said, other than my hands, which are just kind of always cold, I'm pretty darn comfy. I would say this is definitely an enjoyable ride so far. The sun always helps though too. And I do always wear earplugs, so that kind of helps cut down on the wind noise. Otherwise, like I mentioned earlier, the buffeted wind that's hitting me in the face would definitely be kind of annoying otherwise. Third gear. This thing's just so much better now that it's lowered. So much better of a road bike anyway. Oh yeah, I'm glad to have those grip heaters under there. And if you guys missed that video with grip heaters, meaning an element basically that you wrap around the bar or the throttle tube underneath the grip. This side I wrapped 5 layers of electrical tape around the bar before I stuck the heating element on. Otherwise, your whole bar ends up being a heat sink and is always constantly cooling that down or sucking that heat away from your hand, where the throttle side is insulated by the plastic throttle tube. Look at all them birds. I gotta watch my lines. But that definitely seems to be helping. I think the throttle tube maybe feels a little bit warmer, but just a hair. It's definitely worth wrapping that electrical tape around there. Somebody suggested heat shrink as well, which you certainly could do, but I would put a few layers of that on also, I think. My butt is almost starting to feel close to uncomfortable. And it's not like the seat was ever absolutely perfect, but since I put the, oops, I forgot how to use this thing. Since I put the, oh, come back. Oh, did I really screw up that bad? I guess I did. Whoops. I went way north of where I was supposed to be. I think I did this last time too, actually. Oh, well. And it'll closer match that trip. But when I put the seat heater inside of here, which basically just goes directly under the cover on top of the foam. It was my first time recovering a seat, or covering a seat, stapling a seat cover back on, and I might have done it a little bit too tight, but just even the fact that we have an extra layer of material in there, it's going to change the seat, and therefore probably the level of comfort. I wasn't sure if it'd be better or worse. It's not really bad. I mean, I've been on the bike for probably about an hour now, and it's not anything that I would say I'm too disappointed in so far yet anyway. Wind's still definitely catching me. That is one thing that I think I really do also like about having wind protection on a bike like this, even if it is just a little bit. You don't get beat up by the wind so much that it's kind of affecting the ride of the bike, which I think, I mean, just not having the wind on you constantly sort of brings the fatigue load down a little bit, but just the fact that you don't also have to kind of constantly fight to keep the bike in line then. And I mean, it's not like it's a huge difference, it's a small difference, but I think something that, I don't know, I guess I like to think that I can notice anyway. Yeah, those grip heaters are too warm though. I'm gonna flip those down to low. I think maybe without the Hemisphere off-road rally fairing, I would probably be a bit cooler, because I mean I can tell my whole chest area and even really my neck, I mean, doesn't seem to be getting any of that wind, or at least not enough of it to really cool me down. Without that, I definitely would have had to turn that seat heater on just to kind of warm myself up a bit. As nice as it is to be able to stand up and see for miles and miles and miles and miles, I do think that having the pegs about an inch lower would be kind of nice, just to kind of keep the center of gravity a little bit lower. And I mean, of course, if you're actually riding hard off-road, you should be in the attack position, but I like being able to stand up and stretch my old broken back out. Not actually broken, just nearly broken in a snowboard accident years ago. Swamp's still a little frozen. So this right here is going to be under down recreational area. which is not plowed during winter. So hopefully whatever snow was there is at least melted enough that we can get through easily. I don't know why we're 10 miles out here. Let's see how this thing does on the off-road trails. The gravel roads, I suppose, not really off-road. Off the pavement. Yeah, I can tell already. I like it so much better lowered, and I mean, I've been telling you guys that since I lowered it pretty much, but if you guys remember that first ride that I took this bike on up here on these roads or trails or whatever you want to call them last year, there's a little bit of ice, snow. I definitely was a little bit hesitant, and at the time I thought that it was just kind of, you know, the first ride of the year jitters and just kind of getting back into the swing of things and really just kind of getting used to a new bike. Thought maybe it had something to do with the stock tires, and especially once I got the XR650 and took that out here on the D Sports, I thought for sure it had to be something to do with the tires that I just, you know, didn't quite trust them. But then I kind of quickly realized that it was actually the height of the bike. Woo, it's a little little sloppy here. And now, of course, like I mentioned earlier, this thing is still quite a bit taller than the DR. I've got 12 inches of ground clearance on this, and I think the DR is like 10, even with this lowered. With this thing in stock form, it's got 13 inches of ground clearance. So obviously, even just the lowest part of the engine is quite a bit higher, 2 inches higher than the DR. So that's certainly going to bring the center of gravity up, but also just the 35-inch seat height, which is, I suppose, actually not too far off from the DR, which is 34.8. Just moving all of that, all of that weight, the bikes and mine, up so high, just makes it, well, not as much fun to ride off-road, and really, not as much fun to ride on the road either. Of course, if you're a professional motocross rider, then you might prefer a nice, tall stock XR, but that's not me. I'm a dual sport guy and really kind of a dual sport adventure rider, I suppose, that often finds himself in situations like this. At least I'm not on the Tenere 700 like I was when I was here with my dad on while he was on his XE800. There was a lot more snow and ice that day. I'm hoping that I can get past the point where we were, where we had to turn around on that ride. Definitely brings back a lot of memories coming up here, because this was basically the first place my dad and I ever took that XE800 Tiger of his and the DRZ of mine. And I sure enjoyed getting out and doing those rides, but I'm definitely much happier on this bike. It just seems like it's built way more for this type of thing, especially now with these mods. And I'm not too displeased. Yeah, this is where we had to stop. Looks like we're okay to keep going. For now, anyway. And as nice and smooth as these waypoints are, I should be standing up. This isn't that slippery, I don't think. Whoa! You never know until you actually get on snow or ice how it's gonna affect the ride. Let's see what it looks like up here. But the D Sports definitely give me a lot more traction in all directions, really, both for takeoff and for just kind of side to side. And the waypoints will certainly get you through, but they're certainly not going to grab near as good as the super tall lugs do on the D Sports. However, like I mentioned, the D Sports are not exactly ideal for highway travel, and I think they would be okay on here. But I've actually got a second set of wheels and tires that I'm working on that is going to be also fairly knobby, and I think should look pretty cool on this bike, and I'm excited to get those tested out along with the different sprocket on the back, so that should be kind of fun. Hopefully I can get those put back together one of these days. I've been having trouble with the bearings and the seal retainers. Oh, I love this trail. And this bike too, man. This is a good bike. Honestly, a little bit surprised that I was kind of disappointed with it with the 14 tooth at the higher speeds. But I think, like I said, that's just because I've been riding the DR. And the DR is a darn good bike and a hard machine to beat. But this thing is just, woo, just a beast, especially on the trails like this. And definitely, I think, maneuvers a lot better, partially because of the suspension, but also just the geometry in general. Just really always liked this bike and really kind of always liked Hondas. They know how to make a machine. It's the end of the trail. Yeah, and if you've got a giant inseam height, I mean, I could see where this would be a fun bike in its stock configuration, but with a 31-inch inseam and being 5'10", I just have so much more confidence on this thing, just because I know I can easily get my foot to the ground. And whoa, you shouldn't be riding around like you're gonna have to put your foot down or waiting to put your foot down. But there are certain circumstances, like turning around or when one of the tires slips and you don't expect it to, that being a little bit closer to the ground can make a pretty big difference, and can be the difference between pulling a muscle, tipping the bike over on yourself, on your leg, or just simply putting your foot down. So all depends what you're looking to do, and I'm not looking to impress anybody or what the heck. Oh, that must be a regular bicycle trail. Whew. I'm just looking to get out here and enjoy the trails, enjoy the ride, and enjoy the scenery. Whoa! And stay upright. Oh man. Well, I guess I didn't mention it, but I turned the heated grips off because I figured this might happen. I'm getting warm and sweaty. Whoa. As much as I was never a believer in Under Armour or base layers or anything, I used to always just ride around with jeans and a t-shirt underneath my motorcycle stuff. It seems like this MSR stuff anyways, which I think is a pretty reasonable price in comparison to any of the other Under Armour brands, but of course whatever works best and fits your budget is good. But I would definitely suggest picking up a set of some sort of or some sort of base layer, just because it kind of helps keep the moisture or pull the moisture away from you a little bit. So if you do get sweaty, you're not stuck with that wet, sweaty feeling for the rest of the ride. And it also makes motorcycle gear with vents in it. Whoa, that's just glare ice. It makes it a lot more versatile, because then you can just slap on a set of I keep wanting to say Under Armour. You can just slap on a thin base layer and then open the vents up. And I wear this coat and pants when it's 75, even probably 80 degrees. And somebody that's been, I suppose I guess you'd say 2 accidents. Got hit by a car once and by a minivan, and came across some chip seal that just looked like road in the dark, and they didn't have it signed or anything, so I ended up on my side real quick. It's definitely worth wearing protection, at least as much protection as you can stand to wear on whatever type of ride you're going on. Otherwise you end up with a permanent scar on your arm like I've got. It certainly wasn't fun to have to redress that wound every morning and afternoon. And if you like getting out and riding, it's a lot easier to do that when you're not all scarred up. So wear your gear. I don't care if you use my affiliate links or not. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to convince you to learn from my mistakes instead of making them on your own. Although I guess when I was in my accident when I got hit by the minivan, I was all geared up. And I'm certainly glad that I was. The first time, I was riding around in a t-shirt. I always wore a helmet. Didn't have gloves on though. Boy, did that hurt. Ooh. And it's just warm enough that this stuff is wet, so it's slippery because of that. But other than a couple patches of glare ice, it seems like it's been a little bit of traction. And the waypoints are doing okay, but I think in general I would, like I said, off-road always, especially on really slippery stuff like this. Prefer to have the extra, not be D-Sports. Not that they're going to be invincible or not that they're made for ice. Ooh, yeah, this being in the shade, that's not good. Maybe it's okay. No, it's pretty slippery. There's just some gravel on top of it. Whoa, I went the back. Let's get off of there. Much better. And now right back on. So almost going to ask my dad if he wanted to come with, but I figured it would look like this, so decided I would only make myself go through this. Oh yeah, and I'm squeezing those bars too tight. And in this situation, I think maybe having the bars a little bit lower might be better. And it's not like it really keeps your center of gravity much lower. Why do I have my signal light on? But I don't know, it's just something about it. Just being a little bit higher, I don't know, maybe it's just in my head, but it just doesn't feel quite as good. Oh, well. What do we do about this? That, I guess. Well, I was hoping to kind of compare the feeling that I had on this to begin with, which I suppose I did to begin with a little bit, in comparison to the feeling that I had on the DR when I got out here and just wanted to go, and that bike just still makes me feel that way. I think the ice and stuff is certainly slowing me down, as is, oh yikes, that's not good, not good, not good. Don't ever ride on ice. I would really like to be able to go a little bit faster, but I think, I mean, it's not like I really need to be out here to test that. I mean, I think this is, and not I think, I know this is definitely a much more fun bike to ride on gravel, or really any trail, other than, I guess, if you're really doing some crazy log hopping or something, and maybe or you know, maybe on a motocross track things would be different. But in 99% of the riding that I do, having this a little bit lower is just much more confidence inspiring, again, just because that center of gravity is lower. So it makes the tires job hanging on to, you know, whatever you're riding over so much easier, because you're not cantilevering so much weight off of the side of them, and that means they just don't need as much traction, and will just make you feel a lot more confident and hang on much better. And it just makes the bike just feel like it's a little bit more meant for this type of thing. And it's still not as close to the DR, of course, like I already mentioned, just because it is 2 inches higher. And the DR, I think, just in general kind of keeps the majority of its weight, even the tank and the fuel in it, a little bit lower. So that's still, I would assume, going to feel better. And we'll take the DR back out here and get a feel for how that bike does. But with all the testing that I did last year, I mean, not really too concerned about it. I think I can pretty safely say that this is better, but still not going to feel as good as the DR. However, the suspension on this thing, especially in the sort of chattery bumps, but really over any sort of bumpy terrain, really anything other than completely smooth terrain, the suspension on this out of the box is so much better than the overly plush suspension on the DR. I mean, that bike just, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. And I think I feel like I've even noticed it out on the pavement now that I've been a little bit more in tune to the differences. The stiffer suspension on here and the sloppy soft suspension on there, for me and the type of riding that I like to do both on and off-road, it just makes everything better. It just makes the bike handle in general, no matter what you're talking about, on-road, off-road, bumpy, probably even smooth road, honestly, in some aspects, just so much better. But I mean, I've definitely had situations on the DR where I've literally been talking about how the low center of gravity makes it feel stuck to the road, and then gone over a bump and almost lost the front end, because while suspension, of course, needs to soak up bumps and, you know, help you when you're going over jumps or really rough stuff, and, you know, just makes the ride more comfortable, the most important job the suspension has that I think a lot of people don't really think about is keeping the tires connected to the ground, because as soon as they're not connected to the ground and you lose traction, especially if you're off, you know, leaning one way or the other, if you lose that traction, you may lose the bike and end up on the ground. So it's definitely important to have suspension, or at least to know and understand your suspension and how it might affect the type of riding that you're going to do. And out of the box, the XR suspension is pretty hard to beat. And for that reason, whoa, it definitely gives me confidence. Yeah, that was close. In that situation right there, with that kind of wet slop from the ice melting, kind of breaking up a little bit in the soil here, makes for a bit of a wild ride, and not having those big knobs, I think definitely almost bit me there. But if you are looking for a tire that is nice and smooth on the road and handles really well on the road, these Waypoints are not a bad option, because like you saw there, even though maybe it wasn't ideal, it stayed up, and they do, I would say, a pretty good job of splitting performance between on and off road. They're not ideal for either, but certainly more road oriented than the D Sports are. And it can still be pretty fun off road, especially if you don't mess around with a whole lot of mud. Yeah, I certainly am feeling a lot more capable on this bike, even with the little bit of sloppy terrain and the less than grippy tires on said sloppy terrain. So I think dropping this bike definitely did exactly what I was hoping that it would. We're rolling up to the campsites here. Add a new trail there? Looks like it. Look at that. You guys have to let me know what you think of the Insta360 in that location. I definitely would rather capture the whole bike, but having it a little bit closer in just, I think, makes a lot more sense. It's probably a lot smarter. What an awesome spot to stop and have a little snack and admire my work and, of course, the creators' work. It's just such a beautiful place up here. I love everything about this whole entire area. It's just such a cool place. One of my favorite places to be, and definitely one of my favorite places to ride. Yeah. I did back the bike onto the ice. Let's hope I can get off halfway decent without sliding off into the abyss there. So what do we got? 34 miles on the trip meter since I filled up, so that means about 68 to get back. And judging by when I had to flip to reserve on the way to the fuel station earlier today, I'm probably going to have to flip this to reserve. And now that I think about it, it's already on reserve. Maybe I should just leave it. If you guys have a bike with a petcock like this, I would highly suggest riding around and in a safe area, of course, and practicing flipping that to reserve, because it's definitely caught me off guard a few times where I'm on the highway and have to flip to reserve, and I'm sort of trying to remember which way I need to spin it or even where it is. So definitely a good thing to practice and get some muscle memory down for. All right, let's see if we can get off this ice now. Oh yeah. Ooh, well, spoke a little soon there, but we made it. this is a fun bike. I wish these trails weren't so darn sloppy. I guess I'm not going to go up that. I don't even think I'm going to look at it. How's it look? Icy? Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I mean, kind of icy. My wife always tells me to be good when I go out on these rides. I think I am for the most part. Oh, boy. This was not smart, though. Whoop. There's more snow and maybe a giant puddle. Something moving in that puddle? I want to get stuck in the ice. That wouldn't be good. Ooh. This is really rutted out. Oh boy. And very wet. And slippery. But we made it. Waypoints might not be the best, but they do pretty good for what they are. I think I actually wish that the front was just a hair knobbier. Not much. Because then you'd start to lose on-road performance, but I think just a little bit to kind of keep up with the back, because it does seem a bit more aggressive to me. I think that would be nice. This is the end of the line, right? Oh, maybe not. Nice hill climb. Which I believe goes absolutely nowhere, if I recall. Yep. This is it. Be a good test for the fact that this is still not exactly all that easy for me to get to the ground with. It's a little lake down there. Like a swamp. There. 16-point turn and we're on our way. I was talking about how I'm going to have to flip to reserve. Better get back to the gas station, or at least near a gas station, or burn up too much. And that 91. Oh, it feels good to get back out here again, though. I miss doing stuff like this, too. This exact type of riding, what we're doing right now, is really what I did for years. I love getting out here and exploring. Oh, we gotta go down this hill, though. Make sure nobody's coming. I guess we could just go off into the snow if they are. I don't see anyone. Don't touch the brakes. We're clear-ish. Yeah, I'm sweating now. Oh, yeah, this is just a perfect bike for this, though, man. It climbing up those hills and doing all this, kind of hairy stuff. While I'm certainly not recommending it, especially when it's snowy and when you're by yourself. But I mean, having this 346-pound bike, which of course has a little bit more weight on it now with the mods, just is vastly better than the 460 pounds that my last Gen 3 KLR was, and even the 430-pound Gen 2. I mean, you could do the exact same thing that I'm doing today, but I wouldn't do it unless I had somebody else here with me. And again, not that what I'm doing today is necessarily smart or something I'd recommend, but I mean, I'm obviously feeling more than confident enough to do it on this bike, and I mean, that just cannot be said for the KLRs, either of them, really. I mean, yes, I know you could do it, and if you're bigger than me, more built and taller inseam height, I mean, I'm sure you could do it, but I guarantee you it's going to be way more fun on this bike. There's no getting around that. It's definitely a good machine, and definitely, I think, what I was hoping for when I bought the DRZ, and also I think what I was hoping for when I bought the KLR. Just wanted all that wind protection and didn't want to have to add, a bigger tank, a big fairing. Well, actually, back then I didn't want to have to add a universal windscreen, just because I kind of like stuff that looks, well, not exactly like you just stuck a universal windscreen on, which, of course, that in some cases probably would be far better wind protection than this, but I like to find a nice line somewhere between comfort and looks, and I think for me anyways, this definitely does it. I really enjoy looking at this bike, and I really enjoy riding this bike. 40 miles now. Hopefully we can make it back. Well, that is one muddy looking XR. That's the way it should look, right? Beautiful. Oh man, it sure is beautiful out here too. I love these swamps like that. That's cool. I'm definitely more than warm in these. I actually brought a lighter set along that I neglected to put on. I almost kind of wish I would. A little sweaty. I'm not feeling too bad though. I was pretty hot and sticky for a while there, but I took my coat off after I was filming next to the lake. That cooled me down pretty quick. The moisture seems to be at a comfy level anyways. I guess we'll see what happens when I start to put some miles on, going a little bit faster. Speaking of faster, I've had a lot of people say that they prefer a KLR over the XR or the DR for the comfort. And I would say that in general, I mean, the KLR definitely feels a little bit more like an adventure bike in a lot of aspects for kind of a lot of reasons. But I think with these handlebars a little bit further forward on these risers like this, I mean, it really makes standing up a lot better, both in kind of the attack position, but also just actually standing up. Can easily stretch out. I don't feel like the bars are directly over the foot pegs, which is definitely a good thing and makes me feel a lot better both on and off road. And we'll see how I feel once I get a little bit closer to the gas station, I guess. But I'm thinking because I'm able to be a little bit further forward on the seat, because the bars are a little bit further forward, that it's putting me in a slightly better location, because like you may have heard me complain about in past videos, the seat on the XR, especially before it was lowered, is at a really, really steep angle. So you're always just kind of slowly sliding forward, and you can scoot yourself back, but it just kind of makes you slide towards the front, which means you're, again, kind of having to keep yourself further back, which just, again, adds to the overall fatigue of the ride. And on a long ride, that can definitely cause some issues, especially towards the end. And I had that problem last year, but I think just the fact that I'm able to sit a little bit closer to sort of the V of the seat, or the lower part, the valley, I don't know, right now anyway, so far, definitely, I would say feels good, and feels, I think, better than certainly better than it did stock, and probably better than it did last year. Following the directions on the guy's GPS app, picking a little bit of a different way home. Definitely feeling a little bit chilly, so I'll flip that over to high, I suppose, to start with, and see how that does. Definitely a little bit cooler now than it was on the way up, but I'm still feeling pretty good. Definitely can tell I had a little bit of moisture under my collar, but not bad. Definitely not feeling wet or cold because of it, so that's good. And again, I do think that that's something to do with the fabric that I've got right next to my body, helping wick that moisture away. I think maybe the wind picked up, or I'm heading into the wind, because there's definitely a little bit more wind noise than there was on the way up. But still pretty comfy. Definitely glad to have my nice clean air pocket. I kind of feel it on the outsides of my shoulders a bit, but my core is pretty well protected and insulated from that chilly wind, so definitely a good thing. Feel the grips heating up already. That's good. You guys ever practice getting to the brakes quickly? Woo! Definitely a good thing to do, especially after being off a bike for a while. Then you get to take off again, which is always fun, right? This bike definitely seems like it stops better than the DR does anyway. It's like I kept saying when we were off the road, these tires really do feel pretty darn good. Even though it is definitely a little bit cold, so they're going to be a little less sticky. I mean, they sure seem to do pretty darn well in the corners. Obviously, be cautious no matter what set of tires you've got on a bike, especially if they're knobby, so you kind of get used to them. And then still always good to be cautious. But these really do, I mean, feel a lot better around those corners than the D-Sports do. And I'll hang quite a bit of weight off of the D-Sports now and then around the corners when the conditions are right. But again, there's just really nothing that beats the smoothness or the kind of good, stuck to the road feeling, and I guess the solid feeling, especially, that these tires provide, where the D-Sports just kind of I don't know, you can definitely feel, especially when they're brand new, those knobbies sort of flexing and folding over, especially when you go to transfer kind of from one side to the other. I really have never liked that, and I definitely like how these tires feel a lot better. Glad I followed the Gaia directions. This is a nice route. I love it when the clouds are like this. That's so cool. I don't think I've ever enjoyed a bike nearly as much, both on and off-road, as I do when I'm riding this bike. It isn't nearly as comfortable as the KLR or the DR. The KLR is going to be, I think, more comfortable and feel a bit more like an adventure bike, but I mean, it's pretty hard to beat this for off-road riding. And I really like how kind of tight you can keep your legs to the tank and the bike. It just feels, I don't know, a lot better. Oh no, I missed a road. I have enough fuel to be running all over the place. Oh, there's turkeys out there. This is a nice blind takeoff here. But yeah, as much as this is not a comfy road bike, it definitely is a fun road bike, and I would say a fairly capable road bike. I mean, more than capable enough as, again, an adventure dual sport type bike. Certainly, you know, not on par with any actual adventure bike, but if you're looking for something that weighs, you know, 350-ish pounds, can do a ridiculous amount of stuff off-road, can still run 70 miles an hour fairly comfortably, doable anyways, I guess, with a 14-tooth sprocket. Definitely very comfy. Oh, look at all that ice with the stock 15-tooth. I mean, there is no better option than the XR650L, except for maybe the DR650. It's a perfect route for the XR. What are you guys doing? That's not much of a pond. I'm gonna go find a bigger one. It's gonna be gone tomorrow. It'll be ice tomorrow, actually. Ice by tonight, probably. Oh! Glad I saw you. Get out of here. So I am starting to feel like I'm sliding down towards the front of the seat slightly, and I suppose I could just kind of sit a little bit closer towards the front, but then, I don't know, I guess I just don't really feel it like I'm in quite the right spot for my back, and I suppose I can just bend my arms a little bit and it works. I just prefer to be a little bit further back. At least on this bike anyways, makes it feel a little bit more stable, I think. And I mean, at this speed, no, it's kind of noticeable that it's a little squirrelier, where if I sit back just a bit, yeah, it just transfers that weight a little bit further to the back and it doesn't feel like it wobbles so much. I suppose it could drop the rear just a little bit more. I've got about another inch that I could lower it with the adjustable lowering link that I've got on here, so maybe we'll have to do that even just to get myself a little bit nicer of a spot to sit on the seat. And if this was not the 1-inch low seat like it is, there would be a little bit less of a deep V, which I think would probably make for a little bit more comfortable ride, because I wouldn't be sliding down so much. It'd be kind of just sitting on that little, well, extra inch of foam in the center. And honestly, now with this lowered a little bit like it is, especially if I lower the back even more, it would probably be kind of nice to have that seat on here. A stock height seat, I should say. One really nice thing about the Seat Concept seats, though, I guess if you order them with the gripper top, is that even if you do sort of feel yourself sliding down a little bit further, you are kind of stuck in place, just because the seat has a little bit more traction than a stock seat, which really I find very slippery and super annoying nowadays, actually, after riding seats or bikes with seats like this, with that gripper top on it. It's just, I don't know, makes a lot more sense for me, or to me. Definitely is what I prefer now. I think maybe the seat could be a little bit softer, though. I think that addition of the seat heater sort of made it maybe a little bit firmer than I would like. But I don't know. I mean, I have been on this bike for a long time, and I'm really not in all that much discomfort. And my phone is getting dangerously low on battery. I guess still looks like we got 25% or so, but really have not been out all that long, especially if you're somebody that rides all day. Definitely will drain your phone down having it connected like this.
Well, that's certainly not what I expected. We got 68 miles on the trip meter since I left this gas station. I suppose I didn't really ride it all that hard. I guess I was, I don't know, kind of easier on it maybe than I normally would be. And those trails weren't anything too crazy, so I suppose we conserved a little bit of fuel. Might as well see how far we can get, I guess, before I have to flip the reserve. It's not on reserve, is it? I did flip it back, right? And I didn't flip it off and then think that I forgot to flip it off. Back to on, and then flipped it to off instead. Should probably check that. $90 miles! It's gotta be coming soon. Thought that for the last 20 miles though. Up. Nope, not yet, I don't think. Oh, nope, there it is. Right? Oh yeah. 91, we'll say. Man, that's ridiculous. That's so much better. Yeah, she's done with now. So I just filled the bike up on the way back here. We clocked up to 94.9 miles. And it looks like we've got 1.924 gallons. So 94.9 divided by 1.924. 49.32 miles of the gallon. That's a new record. I've never gotten close to 50 miles to the gallon with the XR. That's like DR650 territory. Did I really ride it that much easier today? I guess maybe I did. Well, guys, thanks for riding along with me today. If you enjoyed the adventure, don't be afraid to hit that like button. And if you're not yet subscribed, we'll be doing lots more adventures like this on both the XR and the DR, and maybe even some new bikes this year. Until next time, take care, stay safe, stay swanky. Get out there, get out here, and enjoy this beautiful world that God created for yourself. I don't care what kind of bike you got, just get out here and enjoy it. Even if you just got to take a walk, it's worth getting out here, getting some fresh air. I sure feel better. Catch you guys in the next one.